All right. Hey, folks. I guess you're there. All right. Thank you for joining. We are here Tuesday. It's today. It's like 14th of April, 2020, lockdown. And welcome to Alien Guitar Secrets Live, where we talk about guitar and music and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And thank you guys for joining. And I've been looking at some of the comments and stuff on the Under It All and also the Alien Guitar Secrets, and very nice. Thank you so much. All right. So for those of you who want to know, Thursdays at noon we do Under It All, and that's more of a discussion on esoteric topics. I don't even like that word. Well, I don't dislike it, but you know. And that's at noon on Thursdays. It's noon on Thursdays is Under It All. And here we are. So I have some questions here. Let me see if I can find them. That little piece I was just jamming on was just a little chord progression that I created to fool around with and kind of warm up on. Okay, so let's see. I've got some great questions here. And from Tathagata. Hello, Steve. I would like to ask you a very basic question on an area where I'm struggling. How can I effectively memorize the fretboard? Okay. For those of you who already know the fretboard, relax. You know, it's actually a question that I get often, and the method of memorizing the fretboard can be different. You know, some methods could be more effective for some than others, but first thing I might suggest is to memorize the names of the strings. You know, from the lowest to the bottom, it's E, A, D, G, B, E, E, A, D, G, B, E. So that's kind of like the first thing you just got to kind of memorize. And there's all sorts of ways that you can trick your mind into memorizing. Now, in order to approach the notes on the neck, you got to know a little bit of music theory, and what that means is how certain symbols can be applied to a note name to change the actual note. And these are called sharps and flats. Okay, this is very basic, but it looks like some people are still interested in knowing. So sharps are when you take a note and you raise it a half a step. If this is an A, that would be an A sharp. And a flat is when you flat a note. So if this is a B and I go down a half step, that's B flat. Now, something very interesting, you might notice that this is both an A sharp and a B flat. They're called enharmonic tones. Enharmonic means the same. So I might suggest memorizing one note at a time, like all your E's, and just each day just play E's forever, you know, until you feel like you know every E on the neck. And then another, then pick another note and then another, and always look at their sharps and flats and how they correlate. And then you just got to kind of memorize. And in my Vaideology book, there's a page that's dedicated to strings and some little exercises that you might use to memorize strings. But interestingly enough, there's another contribution here from C. Kosei. And he says, hey, Steve, thanks. I watched the whole 2 hours. Ari, page 1 of Vaideology. I made this to help learn notes and would be interested to know what you think. I finally got to see you with Generation X. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, this fellow, Kosei, created this page that you can go to and check out. I wonder if I can. He made this great diagram, and I think it could be very helpful in finding the notes on the neck. I think I'm going to post it. Check it out. Wait a minute. Okay, I just posted this guy's website. I hope it came up. But it's actually very cool. When you look at it, you know what? Maybe I can even get to it. Right. I got it here, but I don't know how to screen share it. It's very cool. Okay, sorry, I don't know how to screen share it, but check it out. I posted it, and also it's observable.com. Okay, for those of you interested, observableHQ.com at, just see the post I did. Okay. All right. I already have a noise suppressor. How do you kill amp hum? Good question, because amp hum has been one of the banes of my existences on tour. I've chased amp hums my whole life, and I've discovered various things that can cause amps to hum. If you're plugged directly, let's just say you're plugged directly into an amplifier head, and that head's plugged into a cabinet, and that head is also plugged into the wall. In a good case, best case scenario, you're going to have no noise. If you have single coil pickups, like on a Strat, they kind of pick up noise because they're not, and I'm not an expert at this, but they don't buck the sound to cancel the noise. So the lights that you might have that are on around you could create that hum, that buzz, even just going from a guitar right into an amplifier. So what I have to do sometimes, and I've had the studio outfitted, you have to buy these, when you're building a studio, you have to use these special lighting controls called variacs, because they completely isolate the lights from the guitar. Not completely, you know, but they take out a lot of that noise. But a lot of times I got to find the sweet spot for where the guitar isn't humming when I'm playing live, when I'm recording. Playing live, it's like a nightmare because you have to dance around the place. You can't get rid of it. It's in the system. Maybe there's a way. If anybody knows, let me know. But single coil pickup hum is something that most Strat players and people with single coils that use high gain have to suffer through. I don't know how Hendrix did it, but he figured it out. There's other kinds of hums that you can introduce into your system. So let's just say you plug in a nice double coil pickup guitar, like a Les Paul or something, or a Gem, and you plug directly into an amp, and there's still some hum. That can have a lot to do with the quality of the electric that's in the system that you're plugging into in the wall outlet, because there can be hum, and I've experienced this countless times. And one of the ways to circumnavigate around that is to use it's like a protector. I use these Furman, power conditioners. When you plug into this, and you can check it out, Furman.com, where you plug into it and it comes, you take it and then you plug the conditioner into the wall, and you plug your amps into the conditioner, and it cleans the signal so that a lot of that hum can be eliminated. And then there's all sorts of other things that can create hum. And one of the next big culprits is if you're trying to split the signal on your guitar to go into 2 feeds, like if you're going like 2 to 1 or 1 input and 2 outputs, I have never found a direct box or any kind of a splitter box that works. I've had people build me all sorts of splitter boxes, and none of them seem to actually offer a completely passive, discrete sound. There's always seems to be an effect in the tone, and in most boxes, it introduces a DC hum. So grounding is very important too, which reminds me, that's another thing you can try with your plug going into the amp is grounding it by getting one of those little ground lifters. And then there's all sorts of other things that can create the hum. Luckily, I have Thomas, and when I get onto the stage, it's as quiet as it could be given the situation. Some clubs that I've played where there's this one in Germany, there's a pole right in the middle of the stage. And I could practice my pole dancing. But there's a huge power plant right outside the building. And I don't know how anybody can play there. It's just noise, noise, noise. So getting that hum out can be a little bit of a challenge. But those are some tips. All right. Edison, please teach the vibrato technique with the left hand. You want all my secrets? All right. My vibrato technique. Okay. Some of you have seen this. I've spoken about this before. I don't know how I got it, and it was just something I started experimenting with when I started playing the guitar. Now, vibrato is so important for the guitar. So many times I hear relatively good guitar players that all of a sudden go to vibrate a note and it just blows everything. Okay? You got to have your vibrato together. There's nothing worse or nothing that will pin you as an amateur as much as your vibrato. Because most of the time when I see beginners or certain people with vibrato, there's this almost nervous reaction. They get this nervous vibrato. And one of the first things to remember about vibrato is your intonation. The intonation is the note that's actually supposed to be sounding as opposed to putting it out of tune when you hit the note. So like in this case, this is a D. And if you push harder, it's not a D anymore. So even the way you touch a note has everything to do with its intonation. And especially when you vibrate. A lot of people, when I see them vibrate a note like this, they vibrate this note. They bend the note out of tune. It's bad intonation. It's fine if that's the effect you're looking for, but most of the time it makes you sound like Ignat McNugget. It just, and the vibrato is relatively uncontrolled. So you'd be surprised. You'd really be surprised how quickly you can come around with vibrato if you focus on it a little bit. So the vibrato that most people use is like the rock and roll vibrato, where you got the note and you go sharp and then flat and then sharp and then flat. So the fundamental note is in there someplace. That's the rock and roll vibrato. You see like Zakk Wylde do that, and when he's vibrating a G, there's an A in there someplace. So you've got this kind of vibrato. Then there's a classical vibrato, which actually kind of goes this way. You know what I mean? And that's kind of interesting because it'll make the note a little flat and a little sharp. So you get that in between thing. I kind of mix those two vibratos, and I do this kind of like a circular vibrato. And the reason why I like that is because when you push up on the note, it'll go sharp, but when you push forward, when you're doing the circle, it goes a little flat. So you get both sharp and flat. And you can still retain great control. So another thing to consider when you're mastering your vibrato is things like the depth and the speed. These are very expressive tools on the guitar. When I say the depth, I'm referring to how far out of pitch you go with that vibrato. So like a shallow depth on a vibrato might be something like, I'm not really stretching the note very much. But then you can get wider until and the other is speed. The speed at which you do your vibrato really will benefit you if you have a control over it. So I like to use all sorts of speeds. So one of the great exercises to just hit one note and try to, I'll use my sustainer so the note will hold out. So you can, and experiment with different speeds and widths. And trying to go from very slow to fast, very smoothly. Sometimes when I'm performing in the heat of battle, the vibrato gets pretty wild. Okay, so also very important when you're going to focus on vibrato is you want to make sure you practice with all fingers, you know, because doing vibrato with your pinky can be very different than doing it with your first finger. And also you want to make sure you practice on every string. When I do, my circular vibrato is a little compromised on the E strings. Because I can't do the whole thing. And also the low E string requires a little focus, and also being able to do vibrato in all the different areas. And then you can start experimenting with double stop vibrato, which means you hit two notes and you vibrate them. You can apply all the same rules, fat, speed, width, all that great stuff. And then you move to three notes. Same thing. Very slight vibrato. Very hard to do chords and not have the notes go dead. The vibrato needs to be kind of parallel. And then you can always use your whammy bar. Some vibrato. Okay, what else on vibrato? Yeah, when you're stretching notes, it's good to practice stretched notes vibrato. Same rules apply. You got to hit the note. And when you're vibrating, you can't, you want to vibrate around the note that is the target note, the actual note you want to hit. And then you can try very wide kind of stretched vibrato. Get that Ace Frehley thing. So that's my tips on vibrato. There, it's done. It's recorded. If ever anybody wants to know, this is the video. Okay. Marco Villarreal. Steve, are or were there any specific topics that you practice from Slonimsky's Thesaurus of scales and melodic patterns? That is so weird that you asked that question, because I keep that book with me all the time. This book. Nicolas Slonimsky is a composer, music theorist, and he wrote this book, Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns, and it is rich and deep. And what he's done, he's taken all various kinds of patterns and scales and created all these various kinds of patterns within scales, and it's uber cool. Do I use it? Occasionally, I will kind of see. For me, it's kind of like I don't. I'm not. I'm not. I don't usually take patterns and apply patterns as much on the guitar because it always sounds like patterns to me. And there's always a little red flag that goes up in me when I start doing a pattern that I've kind of practiced. It says you're doing a pattern, and of course, patterns. Most playing is a lot of playing is done in patterns, and they're great. I use them to get tonalities, and I might take a Slonimsky pattern and then just jumble it up into Vaism or something, you know. But this is a powerful book. If you are interested, I can tell you a great story. I was on tour with Frank, and we were playing in Frank Zappa, and we were playing in Santa Monica here in LA. And Nicolas Slonimsky and Frank were friends. And Nicolas Slonimsky actually came to the gig. He was an old guy at the time and got up on stage and jammed with us. That's right. Played piano. It was fantastic. Okay. G3, 1997 in Vancouver, BC. Rumor has it you and Joe went to hang with Prince, who was playing the same night. Is that true? No. No, what happened was it was kind of odd because we were on tour with G3 and Prince. I was a huge Prince fan. And he was like following us, or we were following him, but we were playing the same nights in the same cities, just across town. And there was one night I wanted to go see Prince, and because the G3 show was over and Prince was about to play, I was finished with my part, and I was so excited. I was ready. He was right across the water, and all I had to do was get in a cab and go, and I would have seen Prince. And I was so excited about this. And I remember this because right at the last minute, I was leaving. I was on the bus, and somebody came to me and said, "Steve, you can't go anywhere. We have a signing to do." Like of 300 people, you know, after show signing. And I'm like, I actually got a little pissed off. I was like, what? Nobody told me. And I was not in a good mood for about 30, 40 seconds. But very interesting. While I was not in that good mood, I left the bus. And this was right when the internet was starting to, I mean, it was very popular, relatively new. And I always try to be as nice as I can with fans, you know, people that are hanging out at after the shows or before the shows. All you guys that bring pictures to sign and sell on eBay, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. You're going to wait there that long to make $6. Okay. So I just remember getting off the bus, and there was a couple there that was kind of waiting. And I was not in a good mood. And they said, "Steve, can we?" And I said, and I snapped at them. I said, "No," or something like that. And I walked away, and I felt terrible afterwards. And sure enough, I looked on the message boards on our website a few days later, and those particular folks had happened to make a post, and it wasn't nice, and I deserved it. So if you're out there, I'm sorry. But I missed Prince that night. But actually, about 2 or 3 nights later, he was playing again in the same city. And this time I did get to go, and I was actually invited to a party afterwards. And that was the first time I met Prince. And he was fantastic. He was out on the dance floor dancing. And I remember this was kind of an interesting thing. I was in Japan. This is years ago, many years ago. Might have been Fire Garden tour or something. And there's this really interesting bootleg shop where you go in, and this guy has bootlegs on I mean, it's called Blue Moon. I don't know if it's still there, but it's this miraculous bootleg shop. Rows and rows and rows of all sorts of stuff. So I went in there, and I was kind of like, man, this guy's got some nerve. You know, he's got all these bootlegs. I mean, and I got a little pissed off at the guy, you know. I said to him, I said, "Hey," because he had, you know, like this many Steve Vai CDs, you know. And I said, "You know, how would you, I mean, what would you think if, like, Neil Young came in here and he saw this and I pulled like Neil Young thing out and I go, how do you think Jimmy Page would feel if he came in and saw this? And meanwhile, there's a picture of Jimmy Page and Robert Plant on the wall with a shopping cart filled with CDs that this guy was giving them. And then I saw Prince and I said, what do you think Prince would think? You have this? You got this? I want this. And the guy said, take anything you want from this store. Well, he might as well put a picture of me up in that store walking out with all the loot. But what was really interesting, that it got all these great Prince bootlegs, and one of them was from Paisley Park. And I remember I was laying in bed that night. I was just about to listen to it, and I was looking, and it was live recordings from Paisley Park. And I see this name of one of the songs is Tender Surrender. So I said, of course, that's a very Prince title. Prince is naming a song Tender Surrender. Okay, it'll probably be a lot more popular than mine, and that's fine. But I thought it was kind of funny, So I put the headphones on, I'm listening, and all of a sudden, the song Tender Surrender comes up, and it's bump, bump. It's like the solo section from Tender Surrender. And I was, what is this? And I look, and on the CD, it says Tender Surrender by Steve Vai. And I was so tickled at this. I couldn't believe that Prince was playing my song. And I remember I had sent him Alien Love Secrets. So I thought, he heard the song and he liked it and he's jamming over it. Oh my God, this is amazing. I was so excited. I started like banging on people's door in the middle of the night. Look, man, Prince is playing my song, I found out later that it was not my song, I believe, because I saw a comment from his drummer when somebody asked him, did you play Vai's Tender Surrender? He said, no, we played Villanova Junction by Jimi Hendrix. So I guess the guy that made the bootleg or whoever, it sounded very much like those songs are kind of similar, so fooled me. But that's my Prince story. All right. Ivan. Hey, Steve, I've been playing guitar for like 20 years now. 20 years, and only now I'm able to play your songs. I mean, I'm nailing Tender Surrender. It feels crazy. That's fantastic. Good for you, Ivan. And, one of the, I love when I see people playing my songs online. It's really touching, actually, that they would spend the time to learn a song. And I think it's actually very helpful if you're a young musician to learn a song that you like, because the process of transcribing it is good, and the process of finding, you could go and you could see the way I play it and kind of find some of those notes or some of the riffs. And but one of the things I might suggest when you're, let's say, when you're learning Tender Surrender, when I create a mental landscape for that song, it includes many of my little idiosyncrasies, the things that kind of feel good to me that might be a little weird or quirky, and which is one of my strengths, I believe, quirky. And I would encourage you to, if you wanted to learn something like Tender Surrender, is to listen to the song, and you can hear my sort of idiosyncrasies, but what would be yours? What you use the melody as an outline, and you can even stray from that, but what are the special touches that feel natural to you that maybe, they're not me, or they're not somebody else? It's important to know that those touches are in there. You just gotta, what I notice a lot is guitar players feel like there's a specific way to do things, and there's rules, and you have to know these rules, and you have to play a particular way to be part of a genre or to be part of the rule playing crowd. Now, yes, there are certain habits, good habits and bad habits you can get into, and there's certain rules, but in regard to your personal expression, there's no rules. I mean, it's there, but I notice, hang on a second. It's the gardener. I had helicopters flying around here before, and everybody's calling me. The neighbor called and said, somebody jumped the fence, and they're running around. So somebody comes in here and holds me up. Call the cops. Anyway, so when you are listening to a piece of music such as Tender Surrender that you may want to try to execute, imagine what your sort of idiosyncrasies would be. How would you like to tweak it? I see some people do that when they're playing my songs. You know, they throw their own kind of sensibilities into it. And you may find it more comfortable to do that than like to do mine, say. I mean, it's good to learn them, but I mean, that's how I learned. I listened to my heroes. I watched carefully. I gravitated to the things that were really interesting to me. I stole a lot of stuff, but I always tried to tweak it somehow so that it sounded more organic to me. As a matter of fact, I would have these little red flags go off in my mind whenever I actually felt like I was doing a riff that I had learned from somebody else or that I had picked up. And like, you know, let's say conventional blues playing. I love the blues. I love really good blues. A little fatigued with some of the white boy blues that just washes over everything. But there's some great players out there. But I never felt compelled to sound like an authentic blues player because I always felt like, why? There's so many people that I never felt good enough, actually. I always think, well, that kind of cool blues playing is beyond me, you know? But I do incorporate the blues in what I do, just in a vaiistic way. You know, it's there. As a matter of fact, much of the stuff I do is based off of the blues scale that I just move around. So something to consider when you're learning a song, put your own screws to it. All right. Here's a question, maybe not a hard one. I saw a video of you jamming, and while you were playing, you did the same arm scan motion over the audience that I saw Jimmy Page do during the performance of Nobody's Fault But Mine. Is there some sort of significance to that gesture other than it looks cool on camera? No, I do it because it looks cool on camera. Look, I'm a performer. I love performing, always did, always loved theater, always loved the idea of sort of taking on a character and playing it. And the character I play is the Steve Vai weird guy on stage. But what I noticed when I look at some of my videos and stuff, I may do things like that, you know, and it just happened. It just happened, and I kept it, and I liked it because it's an opportunity to connect with the audience, you know, and to engage them. And there's certain times that I love to come out on the stage, and usually before whispering a prayer or something, I just take a moment and I still my mind and I just look out, and I actually try to make contact with everybody, make eye contact with everybody in the audience. Because I know what it feels like when you're in the audience and somebody from the stage looks at you. It's cool. And I like to make that connection at a show because they're watching and they're engaged. And I love the feeling of being engaged with the audience at this sharing event. So in some of those moments, I might, when you see me just scanning the audience, I'm actually trying to make quick eye contact with everybody and just give them a little piece of this. All right. The rest is all show. Personal one. What percentage of your income comes from your licensing from Ibanez and other places? Okay. That's somebody that's currency conscious. Well, you know, I actually know that this is a maybe not how much money I make, from Ibanez, but it is a topic that I feel okay talking about. And what that topic is the income that you generate as a musician. I was actually considering writing a little book, another sort of Vaideology, based on all of the various kinds of income streams that you can generate as a musician. Because when you're a musician, a lot of musicians can live hand to mouth from gig to gig, you know? And there's a couple of principles that I picked up along the way that have been incredibly helpful to me. When I was younger, I seem to have had a relatively good balance of financial sense. You know, I wasn't, I'm not a brilliant businessman or anything like that. Well, some people might differ. But there was a couple of principles. I remember reading a book way back in like 1980, 81, and it was called The Richest Man in Babylon. And what it explained was the benefits of taking, whenever you make any money, because, you know, musicians, you know, the income can kind of ebb and flow pretty dramatically. When you're eating well, you're eating well. When you're not, you're pretty hungry, you know? And so I've always tried to maintain kind of like a balance. And frankly, I've always had everything I've needed within the area of income I was generating at any particular time. So The Richest Man in Babylon, the concept is to take 10% of whatever money you make and just put it aside. And you just continue to put it aside. You have to treat it as though it's not there. Now, this is just, you know, when I say things like that, it's like, yeah, but I need every penny I get. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Maybe you can figure out a way when you get $10 to live on $9 and take that dollar and just put it aside. It's invisible. And there's great benefit in this in various ways, because first of all, you're creating a sense of financial security. Not that I would ever propose that you find your sense of self-security in money, because it doesn't work, but it's obviously nice to have, I mean, a little feeling of financial security. That's something that we all kind of, we all are figuring out how to make ends meet. And I had found this to be a very powerful practice because I did this. And the concept, the goal was at some point to be able to have enough of those little 10% saved to where that money is making money and that's a part of your income. And I reached that a couple of years ago. So that's really nice. Another very important tip that I could give that might be helpful to a musician or anybody in regards to their finances is it's very helpful if you can find a way to live just a little bit under your means. So what I mean by that is if I remember when I was making, we were living in Sylmar and I had Stucco Blue Studio and I owned the house, but everybody was paying rent. That was one thing that I did. I saved up all the money I could when I was working with Frank, and I put a down payment on this house that had this great wood shed out back that I made a studio in. And I had everybody pay rent. A bunch of people, friends lived there. Even Pia had to go out and work. And I sat around and played guitar all day and made flexible. And that's how I was able to do it. I was living on literally $40 a week, 20, 40, just giving a few lessons here. And that's all I needed. Because if I was making, let's say, well, maybe more than that, $100, $150 a week, I just figured out a way to take 10% and then live on like $110, you know? So when you do this, you're not getting yourself in deep water. Because if you're making $300 a week and you're living on, and you're spending $310 a week, you got a monkey on your back, and that doesn't feel good, you know? So it would be best served if you figured out a way to live on $280 a week. There's ways. I'm talking $280 in 1980, you know? But the same thing applies if you're making $1,000 a week, or $10,000 a week, or $5 million a year. You know, if you're making $5 million a year and you're spending $5,100,000, you've got a monkey on your back, and that never feels good. So, and as a result, I've noticed that my ability to navigate through my career has always kind of, I've never had financial issues, so to speak. I mean, not big ones, because I always kind of lived below, and I was always kind of saving. Okay, so how does a musician these days actually make money? Well, maybe that's the subject of another whole episode, but there's a couple of things. It's important to know that there are sources. The best way for a musician to make money is to do things that create income that they don't have to pay attention to anymore. So it's like free money. So for instance, so some of these things I might mention might apply to you and some not, but there are multiple ways to create an income stream as a musician. And some of them might be, for instance, teaching. Teaching is a fabulous way to share and also to create a little bit of income. Obviously, doing gigs when you can. Record sales, not as much as they used to be, for sure. And if you are very independent and you make your own records and you put them up online yourself and create a little marketing plan or whatever, that's direct income to you. So that's another way. Another way is publishing. By owning your publishing, I've spoken about publishing in the past. And that's the gift that keeps on giving. If you're out there working and selling records, that generates income to your publishing. But you can, if you have songs that are actually being performed or played in the world, on the radio or in any other form, and you've got your publishing set up properly, you don't have to do anything really. The money just comes. And another is by using technology, such as monetizing your content. We started doing that way early on, as soon as it became available through YouTube, when they started offering it. And the monetization of YouTube, you'd have to research it. You have to go in the back end. You can create a monetized channel, and then anything you put up will generate a little bit of income based on the amount of streams it has. And this is there's certain things you have to understand when you go in the back door of the settings that show you how to collect money from your monetized streams. There's various divisions of the income. One is based on who owns the copyright to the recording, who owns the video itself, who owns the publishing. So these are things that can get split up. It's important that you do diligence in that. These are all little sources of income. It's not any one thing. It's a combination of everything that will give you what you need to kind of navigate through the business. So when you get into the back door of YouTube, you have to understand the parameters and who the owners are of the various elements of the video you're uploading. But when you get past all that, you'll get a check every month. Sometimes it's very little, sometimes it's a lot. For artists that have a lot of content out there, there's companies that will actually, you can sign up with, and they go out and they find, I work with Audium, audium.com. I think it's AUDIAM, and they are an outstanding company. They have this software that can hear one of my songs by listening to the first several notes. I don't know how that goes out, and it searches billions of uploads, and it just automatically captures my stuff. So like if you're at one of my concerts and you take a video, I get paid. Unless you've monetized it for your channel, in which case I can require you to release the publishing portion because I own that. You would keep the video portion, and perhaps the master portion. In any event, these are just little things that you can kind of research, and Audium is a great company to experiment with for that. I think probably I make a couple of $1,000s a month by doing absolutely nothing. Just from streams. I get about 1 million, they tell me I get about 1 million hits a month in various capacities. So the good people at Audium, and of course Stephen and Stephanie Bradley, who are my media team, just do an amazing job at securing this stuff, so I have to do nothing except collect money. So that's nice, and you can do that. Of course, you got to work at it a bit at first. I mentioned publishing, touring is a great, and endorsements. Yes, if you're in a position where you can, there's value in what you do to a company, then there's various ways to set up a situation where you can receive royalties on your signature product or your instrument or whatever. And I've been doing that for many years. It's a large part of my income, pretty much, because I have fabulous endorsements, and the endorsements I have with the various people I work with. I learned earlier on something very important about endorsements, and what that is don't be bamboozled by free gear. That I got stuck in that. I didn't realize I was so young, and money to buy gear was just like a fantasy. Of course, I was able to buy some gear, but then when people started throwing gear at me, I was like, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. All right, sure. Yeah, I could use that. But Steve, can we use you in an ad, or can we use you on our website? And can you say something about our product? So nothing is for free. There's always something you're going to give, and that's fine if you believe in the product. If you don't, you're going to see your name supporting something that's crap, and you don't want that. And I've done that, and it doesn't feel good, and I don't do it anymore. And everybody wants me to. When I say everybody, I'm referring to a lot of the great companies that, hey, Steve, check out this pick holder. Can we use your name in the picture and all this stuff? And it's like, next thing you know, you look like, and in the early days, in the 80s, even before the internet, when it's just you appear in magazines and stuff, I started to feel like I was looking like a whore, a gear whore. So endorsements, I would suggest to try to take a practical overview on them. If you're in a position where a company wants to give you something, the best way to get paid is by liking the product you're using. That's really it. That's what you want. You want to be able to use something that you really are connected with. And for me, I just feel blessed because I've been connected with the greatest companies around. Like for years I've been using Ernie Ball strings, and it's fantastic. And of course DiMarzio. I've been with Larry for I don't even know how long, so many years. And when we develop a pickup, there's the creative aspect of it, which is the most fun, and just being with Larry is fun. He's just the best. His family and my family have just become really good friends. And but there is business. You got to take care of business, and there's nothing wrong with taking care of business. Everybody knows this. So with something like pickups, there's a little income on the signature pickups. And then with the Carvin, when I had a long relationship with Carvin, there was a royalty on the amplifier that I would receive. There's not giant figures, but it adds up, and it's part of that stream that comes in. And also, I like the product. That was always number one. And with Ibanez, that's the mother lode. I mean, we've been together for 35, 36 years now. And I can't even imagine being comfortable, really totally comfortable with any other guitar. That's why I play the Gem and the Pia. They're my, they even look like me, tall and skinny. So there's many various ways to create income streams as a musician. And as much as it's nice to feel as though you don't want to care about any of that stuff, or you're in it for the music, man. I don't care about money. Fine. But you got to live in the world, and having a little bit of money can be okay. But as a musician, you have to research that and figure out the various ways. And I'm thinking one of these days I might do like a book to really examine some of the various ways that musicians can create income streams. Okay. Can you talk about the song Moon and I? Wait, Greg is telling me that I went down. Am I there? Are you guys there? Steve, how do you like the Russian composer? Okay.
Hello?
Hey, Greg, did you just text me and tell me that the feed went down?
It did, but I refreshed it. See?
Okay, so I'm on?
You're still on?
All right. Sorry, folks.
All right.
All right. 1 second. It's getting hot in here again. I covered the computer monitors so they don't distract you anymore. The Moon and I was one of those songs where we were in sound check, and I walked up to the guitar and picked it up and just started playing it. And as soon as I did that, I knew I had a song. The whole song in my mind just completely unraveled. And I knew the B section, and we only had 10 minutes. So we started to play the riff. The band just started to come in, and then I stopped them immediately. And I said, okay, do this many times, then do this, and then go to the B section. This is the B section, 4 bars on this or 2 bars on whatever it is. And then the end, go G, and then F. So this was the explaining to the band in certain terms, the chord structures, the form of the song, and then we were rolling tape, and I counted it off, and we did 1 take, and it was the first time it was performed, and that's basically what ended up on the record. What happened was I got it home, I chopped it up a bit, wrote some lyrics, and sang. And when I was writing the lyrics, what I was doing was listening to the song, and just putting myself in the mental sort of space of what it sounded like. So this was going on, and it just sounded a little celestial, and I just entered this zone, and you know that feeling when it's a beautiful clear night and you're looking up and you see that beautiful moon. So many songs have been written about the moon. There's this space you can enter with it that's very comfortable and beautiful. And I used to have these when I was between the ages of 18 and 20. I used to have these incredibly vivid dreams that involved these planets. I don't know, dreams, you know. And the moon was always a central figure in this, and it was always so close and so clear. And the idea of seeing like a big harvest moon, do you ever see them on the horizon? They're just so beautiful that they look gigantic because of the heat waves, I guess, from the planet or something. And it just evokes this feeling. And that's, these chords reminded me of that. So I just started, there is a love affair. There is a love affair between the moon and I. I just think that's really sweet, romantic. We skate the Milky Way in a forever sky. So this is the dreaming of the love affair with the moon. And all the stars crash like waves beneath our feet. and time could never find us as we slip beneath nova sheets. So this is all imagery that came from investing my consciousness, so to speak, in the attraction and that romantic feeling that the moon can evoke. And that's how the lyrics came out. I'll see if I can remember the rest. But down below, you command the ocean's tides, but you spin alone in a prison of gravity. A magnetic soul cast a spell so enchanting. Behind my eyes, I search in my galaxy. Come to me. Show me how you glow. So, it goes on like that. But that's really the story of the moon and I. And one of the things I've been noticing about that song is a lot of you guys really like it, which is nice. I decided to have it orchestrated. So I'm going to be recording it during this orchestra project I'm working on. All right. What else we got here? Let me look at some of your comments. Do I believe in the idea of aliens, UFOs? People ask me that. I don't disbelieve, but I've never had an alien encounter. There you have it. I've studied UFOs. I've gone through as a period when I was doing the Bodhi Tree bookstore. I got so much stuff on aliens and UFOs. I was so into it. You can see it in the imagery and some of the stuff. And I studied it, the whole Roswell thing. There was this bookstore in New York City called Flying Saucer News. And in order to get in, you had to have an appointment. They had all these bars on the walls, on the doors. And I remember there was these specific, and I have all these like very specific underground papers on UFOs and aliens and spacecrafts. Because I mean, when I was 23, 22, I was just interested in it. And I got the Allende papers. And what the Allende papers are, the secret doctrine on anti-gravity. So I thought, oh my God, I got to have that. So I went to this store and they had unlocked the door and let me in. And it was just like, it was something out of like a Harry Potter movie, And I got these papers and it was just this thing like this and they were very expensive. And basically it talked about how anti-gravity works. Now, I can't corroborate any of this information. It could be all science fiction, all a bunch of bullshit, but it was fascinating at the time. Because what it said, how a flying saucer actually navigates was based on the use of the planet's gravitation and magnetic field. And what a UFO does is it sets up sort of like a resonant chamber for gravity, for the magnetic fields on the planet. So what that means, sort of like, like if your guitar is feeding back, you hit a note and then you turn around and you hit the amp and it all of a sudden feeds back and the note just goes crazy. Well, supposedly these papers described how to do that with gravity by using the magnetic poles of the Earth, by creating a resonant feedback chamber at control. So that would make things spin all over the place. So I thought that was kind of cool, but I never saw a UFO. I roommated with some of them. And I've toured with some people that I might perceive to be aliens. But I know people that have claimed that they've seen them, Frank Zappa being one of them. I just never have. I can go on and on about what my thoughts are on what a extraterrestrial really is, but it would bore you, and it's nonsense. I don't focus on that kind of metaphysics anymore. It's if an alien landed and walked into the studio, it would be cool, be fascinating, of course, unless they were evil. But I would still have to finish the record I'm working on. I think life would go on. So anyway, And I don't discount other people's experiences, although that's enough. All right. In regards to the tonality and sustain of your guitars, I would love to know how the way that is done. Well, a lot of the sustain is done just by the amp or the kind of gain. I use a lot of gain, but my secret weapon for crazy sustain is this little button right here. This is a sustainiac, and what it does is it creates this vibrating resonance, an anti-gravity field with the pickup. So it does this kind of thing. And you hear me do that a lot. It's one of my main tools these days is well, maybe not main. I'll never let the vibrato bar hear me say that. So the sustainer is pretty cool. And I remember getting when it first came out, explain Upanishads. I would love to. Okay. When the sustainer, the Fernandez sustainer first came out, I was fascinated with it and I started using it. And that's when I wrote Whispering a Prayer. Whispering a Prayer, the performance of that song, the execution requires a sustainer and also a particular way to manipulate it. And I really like the sustainer. You can see I use it a lot. I use it to do tricks and stuff that almost look like tricks because they are. So that's how I get the sustain. In regards to the tonality and sustain of your guitars, okay, sorry. How do you take care of your health and stay in shape and nutrition? All right. Okay. Well, I like to feel good. I feel good usually all the time. And that started way back when I was 22, on my 22nd birthday. I had gone through a lot of changes. I was not in good shape before that. I was suffering from depression, anxiety. I was not very well physically. Even through my whole life, I kind of just didn't have a great constitution. Ate a lot of meat, this kind of thing. Didn't exercise. I thought exercising was like, running around the block or something. But I really needed to make a drastic, pivotal change in my entire life back when I was 22, or else I probably would have died. And the main reason was for the psychological stuff that was going on. And one of the things that I decided to do, I started to read this book, one of the very inspirational books in the early days that came to me through my buddy Bobby Martin, was the complete illustrated book of yoga by Vishnu Devananda. And this was a powerful book for me. And in it, it explained things like meditation, diet, vegetarianism, exercises, cleanliness, all of these things. And I needed something. And so I went really cold turkey. Because I'm kind of an extremist at times. I like no sugar, no preservatives, no meat, no fish, no anything, only good, raw foods. It's hard to do, and it didn't last very long. Where I just became a regular vegetarian. But that was one of the biggest shifts in my health, I believe, was when I became a vegetarian. It was right for me, and I always feel that people need to find what's right for them, the food they eat, the way they exercise or whatever. But suffice to say that your physical health is directly joined at the hip with your mental health, 100%. The end. So I can tell you all the stuff I eat and do, but it's all just a reflection of more of something that's going on inside. So through the years, I've remained a vegetarian because it works for me on many levels. And I started exercising when I started hanging out with Dave Roth. He was an intense exerciser. He would exercise intensely, and he brought me along because when I joined his band, I was a noodle. It's just like the old joke: standing naked, I looked like half the letter H. And I started to work out a lot. But I mean, I can tell you these days, I just I try to use my instincts when I reach for food. There's a very powerful thing you can do if you can create an opening to your instincts, they kind of know what's right for you at that time. And before I grab anything, there's just like this radar that you put out, and your body will kind of tell you in an intuitive kind of way, eat that, go for that, don't, not now for this, these kinds of things. So you can find that in yourself. You don't necessarily need anybody else to tell you what's right for you to eat, because it may not be right for somebody else. It may be right for somebody else and not you. I mean, I have a friend that if he kissed somebody that ate a peanut, he would have to go to the hospital. That's how allergic he is to peanuts. I eat peanuts by the droves, so you have to really find what's right for you. As far as keeping in shape, I do work out, I'm just to keep in shape. I've got a little gym on the property. And these days I've just been working, I work out 6 days a week. And my workouts okay, I'll do this one time because I can't imagine that it's really that interesting. But I'll say it. My daily schedule these days and most days, because the lockdown hasn't really affected me because I live in my man cave here and work all the time. So I usually like to get up at about 7 and then, or 6 if I can, or earlier. I love getting up early. And then P and I have breakfast, and then we sit under the tree out front and drink our coffee. And then I go into the studio and I have a little meditation room that I had built, and I meditate for a good period. And then I go to my computer and I get rid of all the emails, or I go through any kind of emails, and then I work out. And the workout usually consists of a particular body part, abdominal exercises. I do these intense breathing exercises. Somebody mentioned Wim Hof. Wim Hof is this incredible guy. Check him out. He has this breathing technique where you check it out. And then I usually just take a shower. I take frigid cold showers. First warm and then totally cold. It's fantastic. Wake your ass right up. Feels good. And then I go to work. And whatever I'm working on that day, that's what I do all day. And then at 11 o'clock, I'm out. These days, I've been working on orchestrations, trying to complete all the tweaking of orchestra scores that I've been working on for this recording project I'm doing. But I always try to retain at least 1 hour a night before I finish to just play the guitar. And I just sit and noodle and just have fun. No rules, no anything. I just let it go. Sometimes I put on a backing track, and that's nice. And then when I get in, there's a guitar by my bed, and I write a song. And I record it onto my iPhone. Sometimes 2 a night. Will they ever be recorded? No, I don't have enough lifetimes for that. So that's Steve I's daily schedule. Okay. This is from Maestro Juca. Juca Lizaquila. Juca, I wonder if you're there. Juca is my good friend, partner in the orchestra projects we do that we're planning, along with Coda Clue, who is the three of us are kind of like the team for the orchestra stuff. And Juca is an absolutely accomplished conductor and a guitar player, good guitar player, and a guitar fan, which is extraordinarily rare to have a guitar player and as an accomplished conductor and composer. So Juca is that. And he will be conducting all of the 4 hours of music that we're going to be recording that I composed. And I did a concert with him in Helsinki with his orchestra. And that was, I forget when that was, but it was fantastic. Absolutely amazing conductor. So Juca mentioned here. Juca here. I have tons of questions, but here's one I'd like to ask. How does it feel when you interact mentally to the music you have composed, i.e. for orchestra, and you are not playing yourself? Do you have a different mindset? Very much enjoyed the scores here. and loving the special moments when the scores start to sound in my inner ear. Yes, because as the conductor of a piece of music, he has to know the scores inside out, every note. And he's a freak, man, because I'll finish a score and I'll send it to my copyist, Greg Hamilton, another fantastic organized piece of the puzzle that helps keep everything oiled well. Uh, Greg Greg Hamilton takes my scores and he splits them out into parts, and he ends up. You know what? While I'm talking about this, I actually have a score up in the background, and I think I can screen share that. Okay, how do I do this? Greg, it's not working. Show and stream. Oh, there you go. Okay. I don't think it's going to look very good. But in any event,
Um, your audio is cut out.
my audio's cut out.
Yeah, we can't hear what you're saying. I think
All right. Do you know how I can fix it?
when your camera was removed, the audio got cut out.
Is it there now?
A little delayed.
Okay, I know you can't hear me. Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, it's back.
Is it back? Greg?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I'm back. I think I'm back. Okay, thanks. Sorry about that, folks. You know what, Greg? Just stay on the line, okay? Oh, I guess not. All right, so what do I feel like when I'm listening to something that I've composed and I've heard in my head, and then put it on paper, and then am actually listening? What does that feel like? It's weird. It's at times it's beautiful, and at times it's painful. Usually, what I'm listening to at first is for wrong notes, because every time I hear one, it's like a dagger in the head. But there's a very surrealistic thing that comes over me, when you imagine something in your mind and you're writing it down on this big orchestra paper, and you kind of have an idea of what it's going to sound like. And some of it's very experimental sometimes. My orchestra music is a lot of it's very contemporary sounding, ugly. It's beautiful to me. And it's just interesting when I'm listening, because it's sort of sounds like an old friend or something, because it was in there and it seemed to have always lived in there, and then all of a sudden there it is. It was manifested, and sometimes it sounds so much better than I expected, and that's always the biggest payoff. I don't know what it is. Just for me to be able to hear music being performed that I had written, that's like, to me, one of the greatest honors, greatest sense of creative fulfillment. And I love that. So it's almost this sort of like somebody reached into your brain and pulled it out, and now here it is in audio form. It's really special, very special. And until there's a wrong note, and it's like, somebody kill me now. And it's odd, because that's one of the reasons I'm going to be spending all this money to re-record my orchestra scores, because they've been performed and recorded live, but usually it takes a couple of performances to get all the bugs out. And I want to get really good recordings with all the right notes, and I know that Juka's the guy to do it, so thank you. All right. Oh, there's another question from Juka. Hi, Steve. Do you approach composing orchestral music different from composing guitar-oriented music? Absolutely. Guitar-oriented music falls on my hands a particular way, and orchestra music falls on the paper, and I'm not restricted by what the guitar can do. I'm restricted what a flute can do when I'm writing for a flute. I'm restricted to what a harp can do, all these various things, but within all of them put together, it's, you've got quite a palette. But it's a very different, there's certain brain muscles that are similar, like listening for melodies when I'm playing the guitar and I'm listening for a melody or searching for one. Same thing, same space as when composing. Oz Fox. Oz, all right, brother. How you feeling these days, man? Hope you're doing good. Oz says, hi, Steve. I would like to hear the story of why you started keeping bees. It's not a music-related question, but hey, I'm all game. Well, we moved into this property here, and it was 2 acres, and it was vacant for 10 years when we bought it. And everything on it was dead. And I did a little research, and I discovered that honeybees are really a great way to pollinate. And I just researched it, and they're easy to keep. The bees do all the work. And I thought it would be a cool hobby. And I was fascinated. And I started studying a little bit about bees. They're incredible creatures. I had no idea. This was like 20 years ago. And I called a local beekeeper. He came over. He brought me a hive. I had done enough research to figure out how to take care of the bees. It's very simple. You go in there, you check them to make sure they're all disease-free, but they're amazing little creatures. I know way too much about bees. And they're fascinating, and they give honey. They give you honey. And there's been I think the most hives I've had at any one time was probably like 7. And one year we got over 600 pounds of liquid honey. 600 pounds. Yeah. And at one point I was selling it through my website for charity. But it's a great little hobby. And when the bee decline came, it was very helpful when other people started keeping bees. It's a great hobby. It's easy to do. Bees are a lot more gentle than most people think. You got to understand. A lot of people confuse honeybees with like yellow jackets. Yellow jackets, they like grew up in a bad neighborhood. They're not nice. Honeybees are actually, you got to get them pretty pissed off before they come after you. So I can go on and on about bees, but thanks, Oz. Giovanni, why did you call it flexible? Okay. Why did I call flexible flexible? Thank you, Giovanni. Very much. I'm more interested in questions that you have that will help you, as opposed to things about me. I'm happy to talk about me, but you're going to be better served if you request me to talk about things that are helpful for you. Anyway, I don't know why I named it flexible. It was just one of those things that came out of the universe. And I remember, maybe this is what, when I originally went to release it, I had no intention of actually making an LP. I thought of using these little flexi discs, same ones that appeared in Guitar Player back with the Attitude song, but they were bigger. Evatone was the name of the company. And I remember thinking, wow, I could just have these made on my own and give them out to some friends, you know? So these discs were very flexible. So I thought, call it flexible. And when I hired somebody to do the artwork, they spelled flexible wrong. And I thought, don't change it. I like it. Flex-able. And it's very interesting how the front of that album cover with the bent guitar neck and all that stuff, and just even the word flexible is very apropos. It's almost onomatopoetic to me, because I'm kind of a lanky, flexible kind of a guy. The music I do has a great flexibility in it. My guitar playing sounds like a rubber band sometimes. It's flexible. So that's kind of how it came along. And I remember at one point sitting there thinking, okay, Vi, if you ever become rich and famous, you're going to have to live with a record called Flexible. Can you do that? I thought about it and I said, sure. There you have it. All right. Steve, is it necessary to make your environment all about the guitar to become a guitarist at your level? I don't necessarily think you need to make your entire environment. It's not that you can make it guitar centric. You can go through the actions of putting guitars around and making your environment very guitar-esque, but that's not where the excitement to play the instrument lies. It lies here. And when you have that, there's no need to try to make something out of something that's not there. So what I mean by that is your best place to cultivate a sense of guitar awareness, to become a guitar player at my level, be satisfied with your level, because there's no real levels. So I would say you will naturally find yourself embracing thoughts, fantasies, mindsets about the guitar when it is the object of your desire. I don't know if it's quite possible to make something the object of your desire, because your desire is something that kind of already exists in you. And some people, their object of desire is to cook or to do a particular business. There's a pull in them that feels natural. So that's what you really need to throw yourself into, or surround your environment will start to be surrounded by the objects of your desire. So finding that object is vital in manifesting your most enjoyable creativity. So I don't think that making your environment the guitar will do it, but focusing on the things you love about the guitar will do it. Heard you went to Berkeley. How important is theory? Paul McCartney doesn't read music. Yeah, well, Paul McCartney's a hack. Okay. That's a very common question about music theory. And I would say, what I always say is, if you're attracted to music theory, you'll just organically learn it and retain it. If you're not, it's very difficult to retain. One example, like in my life, I was never really interested in many things in school, a lot of the subjects, but I was interested in music theory. I liked it. It looked like a secret language to me, and I wanted to know how to read it and write it and control it because I knew the secret of it was necessary to create audio tapestries from my imagination. Okay. So this was a desire, it was an inner desire. It wasn't that somebody said, you have to know your theory. You know, I learned music theory to compose, and I learned a lot because of the music teacher I had. And it's very interesting that I never really I wasn't applying it to the guitar when I started playing. It wasn't until I started taking lessons with Satch that he started showing me how to apply music theory to the guitar. Because I was always applying it to conceptual songwriting, composing. So the most important thing I would say about music theory is if you're totally uninterested in it, it's not of great importance to know it. But what is of great importance is the development of your ears. And that's perhaps another whole episode. Maybe next episode. How about next episode? Instead of answering questions, I focus on ear training. Ear training is where it's at, guys, girls, ladies, gentlemen. It's where you find your note. It's where you can hear melodies in your head and have them come out. The ear has to be connected to the fingers, and it has to guide you, or you're doing exercises, or you're doing scales. And that's fine if that's what you want. But the real joy of playing is in the effortlessness of a melody coming to you and just in the moment, and just letting it come out and hearing it. It's fantastic. But you got to kind of develop that relationship between your ear and your fingers. Now, some people have it. Some people have it in, very greatly. They just have an awareness. One of the most phenomenal things I've seen in my entire life is Jacob Collier. This young, brilliant, incredibly gifted, freakishly inspired young artist that creates out of joy. His command of music theory is deep. Not only is it deep, he's actually developing new contemporary terminology, which is helpful because we need that too in the world. But he does it in a very smart way and practical way. But the theory is not his boss; it's his tool, and that's how you make the best use of your theory of music theory. It's like a roadmap that can help you at times, but really, it's not necessary. So many Paul McCartney may not know music theory. I heard this great story about when the Beatles used to write songs. One of the guys would come in and he'd say, "Hey, listen to this new chord I learned," and it'd be like a A minor 7 or something. Go, let's write a song with it. I was told that people like George Benson and Wes Montgomery were not really theory type guys. And Jeff Beck. I mean, someone like Jeff Beck, it does not matter. He doesn't even have to know the names of the notes on the neck. His ears are so inspired, So what I might recommend in the way of music theory is if you're interested in it, you're just going to find your way to it and you're going to retain it and it'll be helpful. Be careful it doesn't become an intellectual device to create music. Well, you can do that too as experimentations. I've done tons of that, but there's something a little cold that can happen when your creativity comes from things that are just scales or theory or stuff like that. But I would highly recommend at least studying the basics of music theory, just so you get the vocabulary. It's nice and it's not hard. Music is so simple. I know it. If I know it, it cannot be that difficult, as far as the terminologies and things like this. So it will behoove you to at least have some kind of a grip on the simple terminologies that are found in music theory. And one of the things I could suggest, because I know what those things are and how elusive they can seem to some people, that's when I wrote Vaideology. I felt that it was my way of creating a simple book for guitar players or musicians that's basically the basics. And if you just even just read through the book, your communication with other musicians sounds musical. You can get your ideas across simply, more of a language that is understood by musicians. So that's some of the advantages. And a great advantage of knowing music theory is it just can completely open up creative recesses that you would never be able to reach without knowing the fundamentals and the academics of music theory. One of the things that I always suggest is in any field of expertise, there's always a phase that a person has to go through where they have to educate themselves or prepare themselves or hone their skill. For a guitar player, it's just the raw intensity of focusing on being able to do things that you can't do. Make them so you can do them, learning your vibrato, learning how to stretch notes, learning your picking techniques, getting your tone together. This takes work. It takes focus. And then finally, when you start getting these things together, you're practicing to get your technique to a level that's right for you so that you can express your ideas effortlessly, seamlessly, and instantly. And you don't necessarily need a lot of technique or theory for that. But there is a period you have to go through where you hone your skill so that when you jump off the diving board, you've got wings. Steve, will you ever stop touring at one point in your life? I don't know. I'm sure at some point. But I really like touring. I love touring. I love going out on tour for long periods of time. My last tour, we did 253 cities in 52 countries, and I love it. I like the bus. I like waking up in a different city every day and walking around the streets. I love going to sound checks in different venues. I love meeting the people in the Evo experiences each day. I love being with my friends on tour and making music with them and feeling the family that we have out on tour. I love when my family comes out on tour with me. I like meeting different people in different countries from different cultures and hearing about their life. I like tasting foods in all parts of the world. I love architecture. I love to see all the different architecture around the world. I oogle at it. It's just phenomenal. I love to go especially to places that are really remote and play. I was told I was the first American rock artist to perform in communist China and Serbia. Not Serbia. In Russia, Siberia. And I've been to Siberia many times now. And so when that ends, I believe I'll have had enough of it and I'll know. And I just won't be doing it. It's not hard. Touring isn't hard. If I was a singer, it would be hard. I probably wouldn't do it. But I only sing a little bit. As much as I love to sing, I only do it a little bit because it's too much to worry about. Singers have it hard, man. I mean, you don't get enough sleep, or somebody leaves the air conditioning on in the bus the wrong way, or you get the sniffles or something like this. It can compromise a whole show. And I'm just not going to be that guy. All right. Steve, can you play flamenco? Steve, can you play flamenco like Paco de Lucia? That hack? That would be a resounding no. And it's surprising to me that anybody would even assume that I could play, or that anybody could play flamenco like Paco. He was one of a kind. I think I understand what you mean, though. Could I pick up the guitar and kind of play flamenco? No, I'm not. This kind of thing. I get it. I love it. I can't do it. And the reason why I can't do it is because I never really worked on it, because I felt like if I can't be really, really good at it, I'm not even going to start. That's why I don't play slide guitar. But there are, you know what's interesting? I'll tell you what, there's like, I see a lot of guitar players that actually have little secret lives, you know, like they might be a rock guitar player, but you know, in their closet, they're a jazz guitar player. You know, they like jazz and they throw jazz shapes. I was like that when I was young. I used to do that with classical guitar when I was younger. I loved the idea of just being able to take a piece of music and read it and have it sound like music. Fantastic, you know. And but flamenco just eluded me. It's just, but you know, Steve Stevens, fantastic rock guitar player, great songwriter. He's a great flamenco guitar player. That's like one of his other secret passions. It's very interesting to see somebody that's can be authentic in one aspect, one field of the guitar, and then also authentic in another. It's funny because, you know, I tour with Yngwie, and Yngwie's just really amazing. I mean, it's amazing. You know, I'll watch him from 3 inches away, and I'll still go, "What are you doing?" And because you know he has that specific neoclassical kind of a style, and it's very run oriented. But every now and then, when nobody's looking, he plays blues, and it's freaking great. I mean, it's really great. So I would say that would be like a secret passion. Do I have a secret guitar passion other than the weird things Steve Vai does? No. Okay. Do you have a preference, ETA, web, digital, and analog equipment? Do you finish your tracks using analog recording gear or digital? That's changed through the years. One of the and it continues to change based on various how technology is evolving. So what I usually do is first I ask Greg Worth, my engineer, what's going on in the industry, what's new, what's cool, what do we need? Because I don't usually go, and he gets it. He's just one of these guys that has his radar out on everything. I mean, microphones, gear, doodads, everything. So he'll say, well, this plugin came out, you could use this, you know, and so then I might gather some new gear. And we've gone through very many changes through the year in our testing of the best process for the signal when we're mixing, because these days everything's, you know, on the computer, and it's all Pro Tools. We do Pro Tools. And one of the things I noticed back in maybe 10 years ago, when you mix in the box, there's a lot of anomalies that take place. The way the stereo bus gets stacked up in the digital domain when you're bussing, it really has a tendency to do something odd to the signal. And the remedy for that was quite extraordinary to me when we were doing the testing, was to come out of Pro Tools. So you're coming out of the digital domain into the console. The console. And, let me grab this for you. I'll show you. So this is the console. And this is my recording console that I had custom made by Tree Audio, Steve Furlot. And I designed it. And the way I designed it, if you look on this side over there, you know, and I'm not going to start pulling this stuff apart because then I'm going to be in trouble. On that side, those are 500 series modules, which are actually modules you can put in and out of the console that have things like EQ. Maybe one of these days I'll give a whole rundown of the console. And then on this side, if you notice this side of the console, these are the Neve style mic pre's. So I have the opportunity to do 2 different styles. of mic pre's, or many for the 500 series, because they come in very many different ones. And these were incredible mic pre's with EQ that Steve Furlot hand built for me. And they're just fantastic. So when I take the signal, I notice one of the things that I noticed quite clearly was when am I focused? Never mind. Okay, I'm blurry. Who cares, right? Nothing to see here. Steve, take your fingers off the camera. Remove yourself from the camera. All right. That's better. All right. Sorry, folks. What did I do? The autofocus isn't working. Come on, boy. Come on. Oh, there we go. Nope. There we go. Okay. Away from the camera, Vi. Okay, so what was I saying? One of the greatest differences I've noticed in the sound of the mix was when we came out of the digital domain and went into the analog domain. It sounds like a contradiction because there's always some kind of price you pay when you switch formats. But it made a vast difference because of the layout or the real estate that the signal then had. And then I could process it through all the cool analog gear that definitely has a particular sound to it. But you have to get back into the digital domain too. So the converters that you're using are the key. The converters, the digital to analog converters. And I'm not exactly sure what we're using right now. Greg knows all this stuff. Greg, if you get a chance, can you just kind of list on the comment section the converters that we're using these days? But that was a huge awakening when we discovered that the signal path out of the digital domain into the analog, back into the digital, is really quite effective on the tone quality. So I would experiment with that. Okay. Is there a not so complicated exercise that I can do to help me phrase better and find my guitar voice that'll help unlock my inner guitar god? You get a big mirror. You stand in front of that mirror and you just go for it. That'll unlock your guitar god. Works for me. Anyway. Okay, let me see if I can give you a serious answer. I may need a little water. All right, a not so complicated exercise. One of the things that might be helpful for you to do to find your inner guitar god. Your inner guitar god is built out of confidence. It knows nothing else but pure confidence. So it doesn't question itself, and it doesn't turn to anybody else for approval. It's confident in what it does because it loves what it does. So that's what you have to find your inner guitar god. Because when you find that and you express that in the world with no excuses, it's entertaining to watch. Because that's one of the things we respond to when we watch a great performer, is their confidence in what they're doing. And that confidence can only come in you when you are doing something that is really very organic for you. So an exercise, I don't know if I can come up with an exercise that's going to do that for you. But one thing you can fool around with that you might find could help you to express your inner kind of dialogue, the kinds of things. And also this little exercise here can have a great effect on your phrasing. And what that is what if you're soloing, so get this little track up again. Okay, this is kind of an interesting thing to do. Take a phrase, like a phrase, like what's going on? The burl mothership. That's the converters we're using. All right, so you take a phrase, and I'm going to look on here on your questions. I'm going to see, Steve, what do you think? No, that's not a good one. Okay. When will you finish? Okay. What? No. When will you be back? Okay. This is when will you be back in Scotland? Okay. So that's just a phrase, right? So now what if you started playing, but you kept repeating that phrase or any other phrase? When will you be back in Scotland? The answer is I don't know. But so what I'm going to play right now is going to be that what I'm going to be thinking and saying in my mind is when will you be back in Scotland? It's kind of funny, but it's kind of cool. Okay, so you see what I'm doing there? I've made a little funny example of it, but this is a way to find out who you are on the instrument. Because if you take a phrase, I mean, everything I was playing there was when will you be back in Scotland? It was just one phrase, but you can take a phrase that is something meaningful to you. And as you're playing it, you think of that phrase while you're playing, and your intention behind that phrase has to change in very different than knowing the scale you're in and just whittling about. Now you have some kind of a foundation to express yourself. So let's take a phrase. Let's take something a little more like I would never hurt you. Okay? Powerful sentence. I will never hurt you. Now, I will be thinking of that while I'm playing. Okay, so you get the picture. If you experiment with that, the dynamic of your melody will reflect your inner emotional intention. And that's one way to find you in expressing the instrument. And it's a powerful ingredient for you to unleash the guitar god within you. Okay, what else we got? What time is it? Oh my God, again, I went for 2 hours without even realizing. I'm just going to keep going for a while, okay? I hope you don't mind. I love doing this. And I love blathering. How do you detach from the results? I feel like I love creating music, and whenever I come to the marketing, my whole vibe goes down. That's a very good question. It will behoove you to detach yourself from the results on various levels. And what I mean by that is it's your responsibility as an artistic person to enjoy the process and to make your music as powerfully you as you can. And we all have kind of like different brain muscles and instincts for doing certain things. So if, let's say, you are very confident and you enjoy making the music. It says here, how do you detach yourself from the results? Well, if you want to detach yourself from the results, one thing that can be very helpful is to know the fact that you have no idea what's going to happen with your music once it's out there. You know, it's actually, in a sense, when it comes to that, elements of that are none of your business. But if you're fascinated and interested in things like marketing, that's a very creative field. And you can start engaging in various ways to market your music. Maybe that's another whole episode. But here's another thing that I would suggest: if you, in fact, have made a record, or the making of music is relatively easy for you, but when it comes time to release it, all of the marketing is just like mind-boggling and a nightmare to you, and you don't want to have anything to do with it. Find somebody that does. And this is how we work together in the music business. There's people out there that know, they have an insight, they have an awareness, they just have an inner sort of ability to see how to market. They're like, yeah, I get this. I'm going to do this. And then you can do this. And you can do this with all this. And we got to build a story. We need a story. And so there's all of that may not be your brain muscles. It may not be something that is interesting to you. The other aspect of the making of music is interesting, the actual making of it, and the finding the melody. You fetish the idea of finding a melody, just like a publicist fetishes the idea of finding the great marketing tool, So get together with somebody who finds marketing as fascinating as you find playing. And they're out there. They want you. They're there for you. You are there for them. They need you. You need them. And this is happening in every aspect of your life, whether you believe it or know it or not. But it's especially prevalent in a field, the music field, or even business, or anything. If you try to do everything yourself, you'll become overwhelmed. Okay. Now we all know what the feeling of overwhelmment is. But the reason why you feel overwhelmed is because you're not allowing other cooperative components that are around you to aid you. And they're there and they want to help. You want to get your music to the people that want to hear it. They want to hear it, whether they know it or not yet. And there's bridges in between that. There's, in the music business, that on the level that I function, which is not very far from where you need to function in regard to how you go about doing your business. And I don't do, well, I actually do a lot of my legal work because I understand contracts and stuff, but I don't recommend it. And it comes time to do contracts, it's good to have a professional look at it. When it comes time to produce your record, it's good to work with a great producer, a great engineer. These people specialize in what they do and they contribute. They're there for you. So that would be my advice, is to, when it comes time to the marketing, find a way to get excited about the kind of person you want to meet that's going to help you in that aspect of your career. And this will happen through your whole career. You make relationships. But always, it's always good to appreciate the expertise of somebody else, because they're going to come into your existence somehow, somewhere in the music business. If not them, somebody else that does what they do. And all great people surround themselves by people who are inspired at their particular skill. And so that's what I'd recommend. If you feel yourself freaking out about any particular aspect of the business, find somebody that knows it really well, that wants to work with you. Okay. And as far as detaching from the results, of course, you can do everything you can to get your music out there and to get it to the right people for you and get it to these people potentially on the radio, or figure out ways of doing it within your team or yourself. But it's best to be detached from the results, because you have no way of knowing if your music is going to be received by a large audience, a small audience, or no audience. And it doesn't matter as much as what you're feeling when you're making the music. That's the payoff. The goal is in the finished product, but the adventure along the way of making it is where life is. And when each one of those steps along the way has a quality to it, the end product will have a great quality to it. Even if it's not inspired, it may sound good. And then when it goes out into the world, it's really you can't control it. You can't control who's going to like it. Everybody in the world might hear it, and still nothing happens with it, so to speak, because other things weren't there. You can record a song on a whim and virtually do nothing, and somehow it can get out there and become a big hit. I've seen that happen, and it does happen. But you can't. It would be very difficult and stressful for you to worry about its results in the world. You can work on making them the best they can be, but I would suggest instead write more, record more, do more of what you enjoy, and find people to work with who can do the other things because that's what they enjoy. Have you ever thought about trying DMT or ayahuasca to delve back into the spirit realm and try to inspire more songs like Love Secrets? We're all in the spirit realm right now. No, I never did those drugs. I know a lot about them. I've talked to a lot of people about them. I know about the ceremonies. I've never really did drugs. I've never even tried cocaine. Well, once. I had a sore tooth. Somebody gave it to me to rub on my tooth. That's it. I never did it because I knew I'd probably like it. And one of the worst things about drugs is how good they are. But they always lead to distortion. And they always kind of, for me, got in the way of my ability to. Now, certain drugs are very creative, and I know that these experiences with some of these intense hallucinogenics can be used for some people in a creative way. There was a period of time I went through smoking a lot of weed, not a lot, I mean, but you get the impression that when you're high, everything you're thinking of is brilliant, and you're like, I remember I would do it a little bit before I went to sleep. It was actually to try to help me sleep some time ago. And you start thinking, oh, wow, I got all these great ideas, and you start feverishly writing stuff down that you believe is a secret to the universe, and you wake up in the morning and you read it and it says, I ate my socks. Something like that, So, the song Dying for Your Love. So I don't necessarily put a lot of credibility in that. I don't want to use that as a creative means. I don't think I need it. I don't think it's wrong if somebody decides they want to do it. I think if you're going to experiment with these kinds of drugs, hallucinogenic, it's good to be with practitioners that know what they're doing to guide you, because something like DMT can be an extraordinarily intense. I've spoken to a lot of people about that experience and what it does, and I believe I have an idea of what it does without actually doing it. But it's not needed for the spirit realm. Any solos or specific licks you play live that you get nervous about executing live? Not usually. Some stuff I don't get nervous, but sometimes I think, okay, here comes that part. uh, when I was with Frank, it was a couple of tours where it was some of the music was really, really hard. Frank had a repertoire of 80 songs, and that we had to learn and know and have under our hands. And this is for the tours, and it would change every tour, and it would also he would put the set list together right before the show, right before we walked on stage. Every song was different every night. This was incredibly stressful for me because on the 81 and 82 tours, the music that I was performing on the guitar with Frank was not supposed to be played on a guitar. And because Frank would write notes on a staff and wouldn't sit and go, does this work on the guitar? You just had to play it. So there was this one piece of music that ended up being called Maggio that was just death-defying. It's kind of funny because there's this one riff when it comes up, when I was playing with Frank back in the day, and I knew this, and it's a long guitar melody, and it's just fast, and it's really hard to execute, and I had to practice it constantly. And probably about 60% of the 80 songs had all these death-defying guitar parts, and we'd only do maybe 20 songs a night, so I had to constantly be practicing the songs that we weren't playing to make sure when we played them, they were there. But every time Maggio came up, it seemed like no matter how much I practiced it, there was this one line, it was about 2 bars long, that just should not be played on a guitar. And I would be playing the song, and as I knew it was coming up, I'm focused on what I'm playing. Didn't really even need to focus much because I practiced the stuff so much it became second nature. But this one line in Maggio was so difficult that as it would come up, I'd start to feel nervous. I would actually get nervous, and like really nervous sometimes. I never get like once I'm on stage. Back then I was fine. I was never really nervous on stage, but this part I always wanted to get it right. And like when you get really nervous, you kind of feel like you got to take a dump. Sorry, there it is. So you kind of just get like weak or something in your stomach. Well, that would happen right before the riff came. And so, yeah, that was one of the times where I would get nervous. And what's really funny is I was listening to that riff. I think it's on You Can't Do That on Stage, Volume 6, on one of those records. And I noticed that when I was listening to it, when the 59-year-old Steve Vai was listening to it after decades of hearing it, I remember back then thinking, I never really played it good enough. I could play it better. And I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, who the heck is playing that shit? I couldn't believe that I was playing it because I don't remember it sounding that good and that difficult. I knew it was difficult, but I never thought it was. I guess when you're in it, it feels different, And I remember listening and thinking, how did I execute this? Oh, that wasn't so bad. That wasn't as bad as I thought. And then when that part was coming up, I actually got a little tinge of the feeling that I felt when I was on stage 35 years before that, playing it. I actually felt like I had to go to the bathroom. I got nervous. 35 years later, and I didn't even have to play it. I was nervous for Steve, who was playing it at the concert. And when it went by, I thought, you little shit, you nailed it. You just nailed it. And I would only nail it like 3 out of 5 times. And if I went off the rails, man, there's no recovery. So you just couldn't mess it up. And so that was kind of funny to hear that. All right, I think I better wrap this up, guys. So many good questions. Sorry, I don't want to go too long because want to play a little bit. Okay, so thank you guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your comments. Join us Thursday at noon for Under It All.